Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Valiant watching the stars through the main screen when the signal came through. The ship was on routine patrol near the edge of human space, checking for any signs of trouble or unknown alien activity. Jake had been in space for 15 years and had seen many strange things, but nothing had prepared him for what was about to happen. Communications Officer Lisa Parker suddenly looked up from her station with wide eyes. Her hands moved quickly over the controls as strange sounds filled the bridge. The sounds were unlike anything the crew had heard before, like water moving through pipes mixed with musical notes that seemed to carry deep sadness. "Captain, I'm getting something on the emergency frequencies," Lisa said, her voice tight with concern. "It's not human, but the universal translator is starting to pick up patterns. Give me a few more seconds." Jake moved closer to her station, while the rest of the bridge crew listened to the alien sounds. First Officer Bobby Martinez stood ready to take action, and Science Officer Nicole Johnson began running scans to see where the signal was coming from. The bridge was quiet, except for the strange alien transmission that seemed to grow more desperate with each passing moment. "Got it," Lisa announced. Her face went pale as she read the translation on her screen. "Captain, this is a distress call from a species called the Kalari. They're asking for help from anyone who can hear them. Their world is under attack." Jake felt his stomach tighten. First contact with a new alien species was always handled by special diplomatic teams, not patrol ships like the Valiant. But if someone was in trouble and asking for help, he couldn't just ignore it. "Put it on the main speakers," he ordered. The alien voice filled the bridge, now translated into English by the ship's computer. The voice belonged to someone who sounded desperate and afraid, speaking words that made everyone on the bridge feel sick. "This is Speaker Aquinas of the Kalari people on the world you might call Aquatica Prime. Our people are dying. Ships from the sky rain fire on our cities. They take our children and our elders. They poison our seas and burn our coral gardens. We are a peaceful people who have never known war. We have no weapons to fight back. We do not know how to make them. If anyone in the stars can hear this message, please help us. We are few now where once we were many. Our beautiful world becomes a place of death. Please, if there is kindness in the universe, help us before we are all gone." The bridge was silent for a long moment after the message ended. Jake had seen combat before and knew what war looked like, but this sounded like something much worse. This sounded like the complete destruction of an entire people. "Nicole, can you tell where this signal came from?" Jake asked. Science Officer Johnson worked at her station running calculations. "The signal originated from the Proxima sector about 6 days away at maximum speed. Based on the signal strength and the way it's been bounced through space, I'd say it was sent about 2 weeks ago." 2 weeks, Lisa repeated quietly. "If they were desperate enough to send a signal like this 2 weeks ago, what's happening to them now?" Jake made his decision. "Bobby, set course for Earth Command. Maximum speed. Lisa, send this transmission to Admiral Collins immediately with a Priority 1 flag. Nicole, I want you to analyze everything we can learn about this signal and these Kalari people." As the Valiant turned toward Earth, the crew worked to learn more about the aliens who had asked for help. The signal contained more than just words. There were images and data that painted a picture of a world covered mostly by water, where beautiful cities existed both above and below the ocean surface. The Kalari themselves looked like a mix between humans and sea creatures, with blue-green skin and large eyes adapted for underwater life. Nicole discovered that the Kalari had achieved space communication through biological technology rather than the metal and electronics that humans used. Their entire civilization seemed built around living in harmony with their ocean world. They grew their buildings instead of constructing them and used sea creatures to help with complex tasks. "Captain," Nicole reported, "from what I can tell, these people have never developed any kind of military technology. Their entire culture seems based on cooperation and peace. They literally don't know how to fight." The transmission also contained information about their attackers. The Kalari called them the Zephyrian Empire, describing them as beings from the sky who had come in great ships to take everything valuable from their world. The Zephyrians had started by demanding tribute, then had begun taking Kalari people as slaves, and finally had started destroying entire cities when the Kalari could not or would not give them what they wanted. Jake read the reports as they came in and felt his anger growing. The Kalari had done nothing wrong except exist on a world that had resources the Zephyrians wanted. They were being wiped out simply because they couldn't fight back. When the Valiant reached Earth orbit, Admiral Pete Collins was waiting for them. The Admiral was a tough man who had served in the border wars and knew how to make hard decisions. His office walls were covered with pictures of the ships and crews he had commanded over the years, and Jake could see the same anger in the Admiral's eyes that he felt in his own heart. "I've listened to the transmission 5 times, Admiral," Collins said as Jake sat down across from his desk. "I've also had our best people analyze the data your science officer collected. The situation is as bad as it sounds, maybe worse." "Sir, we have to do something," Jake said. "These people are being slaughtered." Admiral Collins nodded. "The question is what we can do and how fast we can do it. The Proxima sector is outside our normal patrol area, but it's not claimed by any of the major galactic powers. According to our files, the Zephyrian Empire has been expanding in that direction for the past 50 years. "What kind of enemy are we looking at?" Jake asked. "The Zephyrians are known for taking over worlds that can't defend themselves. They use large numbers of ships and overwhelming force against opponents who don't know how to fight back. They've conquered at least 12 other species in the past century, either enslaving them or wiping them out completely." Admiral Collins brought up a holographic display showing what was known about Zephyrian military capabilities. Their ships were built for attacking planets and civilian populations, not for fighting other military forces. They relied on fear and superior numbers rather than advanced technology or skilled tactics. "The problem is that they have a lot of ships," the Admiral continued. "Our intelligence suggests they might have over 200 vessels in the attack force hitting the Kalari world. We've never faced numbers like that in a single engagement." Jake studied the information on the display. "But their ships are designed to fight civilians, not military targets. Our weapons and armor are built for real combat." "That's true, but quantity has a quality all its own. The question is whether we can get there in time to save any of the Kalari people, and whether we're willing to start a war with the Zephyrian Empire over a species we've never met before." Admiral Collins stood up and walked to the window that looked out over Earth. "I've already spoken with President Mitchell and the Military Council. We're not going to stand by and watch genocide happen when we have the power to stop it. The Third Fleet is being prepared for immediate deployment." Jake felt relief wash over him. "What are our orders, sir?" The Admiral turned back to face him, with a look that Jake had seen before, usually right before a very dangerous mission. "The orders are simple, Captain. We're going to the Proxima sector, and we're going to stop the Zephyrians from wiping out the Kalari people, whatever it takes." News of the Kalari genocide spread across Earth faster than anyone expected. Within hours of Admiral Collins announcing the military response, protests filled the streets of every major city. People carried signs demanding immediate action, and held vigils for the dying alien race they had never met, but already considered friends. The images from the Kalari transmission had been released to the public, showing the beautiful underwater cities and the peaceful people who built them. President Karen Mitchell stood before the United Nations Assembly with representatives from every nation on Earth watching. The Great Hall was packed, and outside, millions more watched on screens around the world. The president's voice was calm, but carried the weight of a decision that would change humanity's place in the galaxy forever. "Fellow citizens of Earth," she began, "we have learned of a great evil taking place among the stars. A peaceful people called the Kalari are being destroyed by an empire that believes might makes right. They have asked for our help, and we will not turn away from those in need." The assembly erupted in applause, but the president raised her hand for silence. "Make no mistake about what this means. We are committing to military action against a force that outnumbers us and has been conquering other worlds for decades. But we are also showing the galaxy what humanity stands for. We protect the innocent, we defend the helpless, and we never allow genocide to happen when we have the power to stop it." At Luna Station, the massive orbital shipyard that served as headquarters for Earth's Space Navy, General Tony Hayes was already deep into preparations for the largest military operation in human history. The Third Fleet represented the best of everything humanity had built for war. 47 ships of various sizes and capabilities, each one designed and built by a species that had learned to fight on the most dangerous world in known space. The flagship of the fleet was the UES Retribution, a massive battleship commanded by Captain Ryan Bell. The ship was over a kilometer long and carried enough firepower to crack a small moon. Its armor was made from materials that could withstand the pressure at the bottom of Earth's deepest oceans, and its weapons were designed to punch through anything the galaxy could build. Captain Bell walked through the ship's corridors watching his crew prepare for battle. These men and women had trained their entire lives for this moment, not knowing when it would come but always ready for it. They moved with the calm efficiency of people who knew their jobs and trusted their equipment completely. In the ship's armory, Lieutenant Colonel Susan Wright inspected the gear that would be used by the 1st Marine Expeditionary Force. The Marines were known throughout human space as the Hellhounds, a name they had earned through years of boarding actions and planetary assaults. Their powered armor could protect them from vacuum, radiation, and most known weapons, while allowing them to move faster and hit harder than any unaugmented human. "How many Marines are we taking?" Captain Bell asked as he watched the preparations. 2,000 of our best, Wright replied, checking the seals on a suit of armor. "Each one trained for zero-gravity combat and equipped with weapons that can cut through ship hulls. The Zephyrians have never faced anything like us." Wright was right about that. The Marines were descendants of people who had evolved on a world where large predators hunted in packs and natural disasters could wipe out entire cities without warning. They had been shaped by millions of years of surviving on a planet that killed the weak and made the strong even stronger. Meanwhile, intelligence. Officer Danny Clark worked with his team to analyze everything known about Zephyrian military tactics. The reports painted a picture of an enemy that relied on overwhelming numbers and standard tactics against opponents who had never learned to fight back. They used fear as much as firepower, breaking enemy morale before engaging in actual combat. "The Zephyrians have one major weakness," Clark reported to the fleet commanders. "They've never fought anyone who fights back effectively. Every species they've conquered was either completely peaceful like the Kalari or had primitive weapons that couldn't threaten their ships. They don't know how to handle an enemy that can actually hurt them. The human fleet represented something new in galactic warfare. Every ship, every weapon, every piece of equipment had been designed by engineers who understood that in space there was no such thing as a fair fight. Human military doctrine was built around the idea of hitting the enemy harder and faster than they could respond to, using superior technology and tactics to overcome numerical disadvantages. As the fleet prepared to depart, word came in from the few Kalari who were still able to transmit. The situation on Aquatica Prime was getting worse every day. Entire continents had been stripped of their populations, and the Zephyrians were now systematically destroying the underwater cities that had taken the Kalari thousands of years to grow. Dr. Amy Rodriguez, Earth's lead expert on alien biology, worked with the intelligence teams to understand what they were trying to save. The Kalari were amphibious beings who could breathe both air and water, with a civilization that had achieved remarkable things through cooperation and biological engineering. They had never developed weapons because they had never needed them. The Kalari represent something unique in the galaxy, Dr. Rodriguez explained to the fleet commanders during their final briefing. They achieved space communication and advanced biotechnology without ever learning to make tools of war. In many ways, they're what humanity might have become if our world hadn't been so dangerous. The contrast was clear to everyone in the room. Humanity had evolved on Earth, a world so hostile that it was classified as a Class 12 death world by every other species that knew about it. Hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, ice ages, asteroid impacts, and countless predators had forged humans into survivors who could adapt to anything the universe threw at them. The Kalari had evolved on a peaceful water world where cooperation and harmony were the keys to survival. They had never faced the constant threats that had made humans into the galaxy's most dangerous predators. Captain Jake Morrison, now serving as a scout for the main fleet, sent regular updates from the edge of Zephyrian space. His ship, the Valiant, had been equipped with the latest stealth technology and was gathering intelligence on enemy movements. What he reported made the fleet commanders even more determined to reach the Kalari world quickly. The Zephyrians aren't just conquering the planet, Morrison reported. They're systematically harvesting the population. They have processing ships in orbit that are converting Kalari civilians into biological resources. This isn't war, it's industrial-scale murder. The news reached Earth just as the Third Fleet was preparing to depart. President Mitchell addressed the fleet directly via video link, her words broadcast to every ship and every member of the crew. You carry with you the hopes and prayers of every person on Earth, she said. You also carry our anger at what is being done to innocent people who never harmed anyone. Show the galaxy what happens when someone threatens those under our protection. Show them why Earth is feared by those who would do evil and loved by those who seek justice. Admiral Katie Lewis, commanding the fleet from the bridge of the UES Retribution, gave the order that would begin humanity's first major military intervention in galactic affairs. All ships, prepare for hyperspace jump. Destination, Proxima Sector. Time to rescue some friends and teach the Zephyrians what happens when they mess with the wrong species. The Third Fleet disappeared into hyperspace, leaving behind a world united in purpose and determined to prove that humanity would not allow genocide to happen anywhere in the galaxy. Behind them, Earth's factories worked around the clock to build more ships and weapons, because everyone knew that this would not be the last time the galaxy's bullies would need to be taught a lesson about picking on the innocent. The Third Fleet moved through hyperspace like a spear aimed at the heart of evil. 47 ships traveling together in perfect formation, their crews working constantly to prepare for what would be the largest battle in human history. Admiral Katie Lewis stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching the swirling colors of hyperspace, while her officers coordinated with the other ships in the fleet. The journey to the Proxima sector would take 6 days, and Lewis intended to use every hour to make sure her people were ready. This wasn't just about winning a battle. It was about sending a message to the entire galaxy that humanity would not tolerate the destruction of innocent civilizations. Throughout the fleet, crews worked around the clock to fine-tune weapons and run combat simulations. On the UES Thunderbolt, Captain Mike Davis drilled his gunners until they could hit targets with their eyes closed. The ship's main battery consisted of magnetic rail guns that could accelerate projectiles to a significant fraction of light speed, turning simple chunks of metal into devastating weapons. "Remember," Davis told his weapons crews, "we're not fighting other military ships. We're fighting bullies who are used to picking on people who can't fight back. When they see what real weapons can do, they're going to panic. That's when we hit them hardest." On the UES Wolverine, Commander Lisa Stone supervised the loading of her ship's missile batteries. Each missile carried a thermonuclear warhead designed to crack through heavy armor and destroy enemy ships from the inside. The Wolverine was a fast attack ship built for hit-and-run tactics, and Stone planned to use every advantage her ship possessed. "The Zephyrians think numbers are everything," she told her crew. "They're about to learn that quality beats quantity every time." Combat engineer Bobby Martinez worked throughout the fleet, helping to modify human weapons for maximum effectiveness against Zephyrian technology. The intelligence reports showed that enemy ships had relatively weak shields and armor compared to human military standards. They relied on overwhelming firepower and superior numbers rather than defensive capability. "Their ships are built to attack civilians and undefended targets," Martinez explained to a gathering of weapons officers. "They're not designed to fight something that shoots back. We need to hit them fast and hard before they can reorganize and use their numbers against us." The human weapons were terrifying in their simplicity and effectiveness. Kinetic penetrators made from depleted uranium could punch through multiple ship hulls with a single shot. Plasma cannons generated temperatures hot enough to melt through any known armor. Fusion missiles could destroy entire enemy formations with their massive explosive yields. Communications specialist Nicole Johnson maintained contact with the surviving Kalari throughout the journey. Each transmission brought more desperate news from Aquatica Prime. The Zephyrians had moved their operation into its final phase, systematically stripping the planet of all valuable resources while processing the remaining population. "Speaker Aquinas is still alive," Johnson reported to Admiral Lewis. "But the Kalari estimate their population has dropped to less than 500 million. The Zephyrians are using some kind of biological weapon that's poisoning the oceans." Lewis felt her anger growing with each report. The Zephyrians weren't just conquering the Kalari world, they were destroying it completely. Even if the human fleet arrived in time to stop the slaughter, it might be too late to save the planet itself. On the UES Shark, Lieutenant Colonel Susan Wright trained her Marines for the boarding actions that would be necessary to capture Zephyrian ships and rescue Kalari prisoners. The Marines practiced moving through alien ship layouts and dealing with unknown atmospheric conditions. Their powered armor could keep them alive in any environment, but they needed to be ready for whatever they might find inside enemy vessels. Intelligence suggests the Zephyrians use a lot of automated systems, Wright told her squad leaders. "That means fewer crew members but more dangerous internal defenses. We go in fast, we secure the ship, and we get any prisoners out alive." The Marines were eager for the fight. They had trained their entire lives for moments like this, and the thought of rescuing innocent civilians from genocidal aliens made them even more determined. Each Marine carried weapons that could cut through ship bulkheads and armor that could withstand hits from military-grade weapons. Fighter pilot Commander Jake Stevens led the fleet's squadrons through constant training exercises. Human fighters were fast and maneuverable, designed to operate in the harsh conditions around Earth where violent storms and radiation could destroy lesser aircraft. In space, they would be even more deadly. The Zephyrians use a lot of small escort ships, Stevens briefed his pilots. Our job is to punch holes in their formations so the big ships can get clean shots. Stay fast, stay unpredictable, and remember that every enemy ship we destroy saves Kalari lives. As the fleet traveled deeper into space, they began receiving more detailed intelligence about the enemy force. Scout ships reported that the Zephyrians had over 200 vessels in the Proxima sector, ranging from massive command ships to small fighters. It was the largest military force humanity had ever faced. The numbers don't look good, admitted Captain Ryan Bell during a briefing with the other ship commanders. But numbers aren't everything. The Zephyrians have quantity, but we have quality. Every one of our ships is worth 10 of theirs in actual combat capability. Bell was right about that. Human ships were built to survive and fight in conditions that would destroy most alien vessels. Earth's violent environment had taught human engineers to build things that could withstand incredible stresses and keep functioning under the worst possible circumstances. Dr. Amy Rodriguez worked with the fleet's medical teams to prepare for treating wounded Kalari civilians. The aliens had a completely different biology from humans, but early analysis suggested that human medical technology could be adapted to help them. The fleet's hospital ships were being prepared to handle large numbers of casualties. The Kalari appear to be more fragile than humans, Rodriguez explained to the medical staff. But they also seem to heal faster from certain types of injuries. We need to be ready for anything. On the 5th day of the journey, the fleet received a transmission that changed everything. Speaker Aquinas, the Kalari leader who had sent the original distress call, managed to get a message through the Zephyrian jamming systems. His words painted a picture of a world in its final death throes. Brave humans who come to help us, the message began. Our time grows short. The sky ships have begun their final harvest. They take the last of our children and destroy the coral, cities that held the memories of our people for 10,000 years. If you can hear this, please hurry. We have hidden in the deepest trenches of our oceans, but even there we are not safe. The poison spreads and our world dies with us. The message included coordinates for the few remaining Kalari strongholds and intelligence about Zephyrian ship movements. It was clear that the aliens were rushing to complete their genocide before any help could arrive. Admiral Lewis called. Together, her senior commanders for a final planning session. The holographic display in the conference room showed the Proxima sector with enemy positions marked in red and the few remaining Kalari settlements marked in blue. The situation looked hopeless, but Lewis had not come this far to fail. We have one advantage the Zephyrians don't know about, she told her officers. They think they're facing another peaceful species like all the others they've conquered. They have no idea what a Deathworld predator can do when it's angry. The plan was simple in concept, but devastating in execution. The fleet would drop out of hyperspace at the edge of the system and immediately begin a high-speed attack run toward the planet. The Zephyrians would have minutes to react before the human ships were in weapons range. We hit them fast and we hit them hard, Lewis continued. No warnings, no negotiations, no mercy. They chose to commit genocide, And now they get to learn why you don't mess with humanity's friends. As the fleet prepared for its final jump to normal space, crews throughout the ships made their final preparations. Weapons were charged, armor was sealed, and emergency systems were tested one last time. In a few hours, they would face the largest enemy force in human history. Captain Jake Morrison, still scouting ahead in the Valiant, sent a final report as he watched the Zephyrian fleet from the edge of the system. "Admiral, you need to see this. They're not just attacking the planet anymore. They're strip mining it. If we don't stop them in the next few hours, there won't be anything left to save." Admiral Lewis looked around the bridge at her crew, seeing the same determination in their eyes that she felt in her heart. Humanity had spent millions of years learning to fight and survive on the most dangerous world in the galaxy. Now it was time to show the universe what that meant. "All ships, prepare for combat jump," she ordered. "Time to remind the galaxy why Earth is called a death world." The Third Fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Proxima Sector like a pack of wolves descending on their prey. 47 human warships appeared in perfect formation, their weapons already charging and their crews ready for battle. Admiral Katie Lewis stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching the tactical display as it filled with enemy contacts. "Sweet Mother of God," whispered Communications Officer Danny Clark as he counted the red dots appearing on their screens. "There are over 200 of them." What they saw around Aquatica Prime was worse than anyone had imagined. The beautiful blue and green world was now brown and gray, its oceans poisoned and its continents stripped bare. Massive Zephyrian mining, ships hung in orbit like metal vultures, processing the planet's resources while smaller vessels continued the systematic destruction of any remaining life. "All ships, weapons free," Admiral Lewis commanded, her voice carrying across the fleet's communication channels. "Target the ships attacking civilian areas first. Show them what happens when they hurt our friends." The UES Retribution fired the opening shot of the Battle of Aquatica Prime. A kinetic penetrator launched from the ship's main railgun crossed the distance to the enemy fleet in seconds, moving at 30% of light speed. The depleted uranium projectile punched through 3 Zephyrian destroyers in a single shot, converting them into expanding clouds of superheated plasma and debris. Captain Ryan Bell coordinated the fleet's assault with the cold efficiency that made human naval officers legendary throughout the galaxy. The Zephyrians had never faced an enemy that could hit them from such incredible distances with such devastating accuracy. Their formation began to collapse as ship after ship disappeared in brilliant flashes of light. "Target the command ships," Bell ordered his weapons crews. "Take out their ability to coordinate and they'll panic." The Retribution's missile batteries opened fire, launching a barrage of thermonuclear warheads at the largest Zephyrian vessels. Each missile was guided by artificial intelligence systems that could think faster than any biological brain, adjusting their course to penetrate enemy defenses and strike at the most vulnerable points. The first Zephyrian command ship died in Nizdo, a ball of nuclear fire that lit up the entire system. The second command ship tried to retreat, but was caught by a spread of plasma torpedoes from the UES Wolverine. Captain Lisa Stone watched with satisfaction as the enemy vessel came apart, under the intense heat of her weapons. "That's for every Kalari child you murdered," she said quietly. The Zephyrians attempted to return fire but quickly discovered that human ships were built to completely different standards. Their weapons were designed to break the will of civilians and destroy undefended targets, not to penetrate military-grade armor. The shots that did hit human vessels were absorbed by shields and armor that had been tested against the worst that nature could produce. Commander Jake Stevens led Fighter Squadron 77 in a devastating attack on the Zephyrian escort ships. Human fighters danced through enemy formations like deadly sharks, their fusion rockets and railguns tearing apart anything in their path. The Zephyrian pilots had never faced opponents who could move so fast and hit so hard while remaining almost impossible to target. These guys couldn't hit the broadside of a space station, Stevens radioed to his wingman as he destroyed his fifth enemy fighter. They're used to shooting at people who don't shoot back. Lieutenant Colonel Susan Wright prepared her Marines for boarding actions against the Zephyrian processing stations where Kalari civilians were being held. The sight of the massive industrial complexes filled her with rage, and she was determined to rescue every prisoner she could find. "First Company, you take the upper levels," she commanded as the Marine assault shuttles approached their targets. "Second Company, secure the processing areas. Third Company, find the prisoners and get them out. Anyone who gets in our way goes down hard." The Marines hit the processing station like a hurricane of violence and destruction. Their powered armor shrugged off Zephyrian weapons, while their own guns returned fire with depleted uranium rounds that could punch through ship bulkheads. The aliens had never faced ground troops trained on a world where everything tried to kill you. Wright kicked down the door to what appeared to be a control room and found 3 Zephyrian technicians cowering behind their equipment. The aliens looked like oversized insects with too many arms and eyes that reflected her helmet lights. They were clearly terrified by the sight of a human in full combat armor. "Where are the prisoners?" she demanded, her voice amplified by her armor's speakers. One of the aliens pointed with a shaking appendage toward a lower section of the station. Wright zip-tied all 3 of them to keep them from causing trouble and moved on to find the Kalari civilians. What she found in the processing areas made her sick with rage. The Kalari had been kept in conditions that could only be described as torture. Hundreds of the aquatic beings were crammed into small tanks with barely enough water to keep them alive. Many showed signs of experimentation and biological sampling. Some had been partially processed into the biological resources that the Zephyrians were harvesting. "Medical teams to processing section C immediately," Wright called over her radio. "We've got survivors, but they're in bad shape. And send word to the Admiral that we're documenting everything for war crimes evidence." Throughout the station, her Marines worked to free the imprisoned Kalari while fighting off Zephyrian security forces. The aliens had never faced opponents who fought with such skill and determination. Every human soldier seemed to be worth a dozen of their own troops. Back in space, the main battle continued to rage around the planet. Admiral Lewis watched as her ships systematically destroyed the Zephyrian fleet with minimal losses. The enemy had the numbers, but human technology and tactics were proving superior in every engagement. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Zephyrian Fleet Commander," reported Communications Officer Nicole Johnson. "He wants to negotiate." Lewis looked at the tactical display showing the burning remains of Zephyrian ships and the evidence of genocide on the planet below. Her decision was immediate and final. "Put him through," she ordered. The alien's voice came through the speakers, translated by the ship's computer. Admiral Kethvar sounded desperate and afraid, nothing like the confident conqueror he had been when attacking defenseless civilians. "Human Fleet Commander, I am Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian 7th Fleet. I call for a ceasefire under Galactic Conventions of War. We can negotiate terms for withdrawal and compensation." Lewis stepped forward so her voice would carry clearly across the communication channel. When she spoke, her words were heard by every ship in both fleets. "Admiral Kethvar, you have committed genocide against a peaceful species. You have tortured civilians and destroyed an entire world. There will be no negotiations, no terms, no mercy. You chose to be a monster, and now you get to learn what happens when monsters meet something more dangerous than they are. The transmission ended, and Lewis turned back to her tactical display. All ships, continue the attack. No enemy vessel leaves this system. Captain Mike Davis aboard the UES Thunderbolt led a formation of heavy cruisers against the Zephyrian mining ships. These massive vessels were stripping the last resources from Aquatica Prime, while their escorts tried desperately to defend them. Davis felt no sympathy for the aliens as his railguns tore through their hulls. Every one of these ships represents the death of millions of Kalari, he told his crew as they destroyed another mining vessel. We're not just fighting a battle. We're delivering justice. The battle reached its climax when Admiral Lewis ordered a direct assault on the Zephyrian flagship. The massive alien vessel was 3 times the size of any human ship, but size meant nothing when facing weapons designed to crack asteroids and punch through planetary crust. All heavy units, concentrate fire on the flagship, Lewis commanded. Time to end this. The combined firepower of the human fleet focused on the Zephyrian command ship like a hammer of pure energy. Railgun rounds, plasma bolts, and nuclear missiles converged on the target from every direction. The alien vessel's shields collapsed in seconds, and its armor began to melt under the incredible heat of human weapons. Admiral Kethvar's final transmission was a scream of rage and disbelief as his ship came apart around him. "This is impossible! You are just another primitive species! We are the Zephyrian Empire!" "You were the Zephyrian Empire," Admiral Lewis replied as the enemy flagship exploded in a brilliant flash that could be seen from the planet's surface. "Now you're space debris." The destruction of the flagship broke what remained of Zephyrian morale. The surviving enemy ships tried to flee, but human fighters and fast attack vessels hunted them down one by one. Captain Jake Morrison in the Valiant used his ship's advanced sensors to track fleeing enemies and call in strikes from the heavier vessels. "That's the last of them," Morrison reported as the final Zephyrian ship disappeared in a ball of plasma. "System is clear of hostile forces." The Battle of Aquatica Prime was over. In less than 4 hours, the human Third Fleet had completely destroyed a Zephyrian force that outnumbered them more than 4-1. Not a single enemy vessel escaped to carry word of their defeat back to Zephyrian space. The rescue operations began immediately after the last Zephyrian ship was destroyed. Hospital ship UES Mercy, commanded by Captain Helen Davis, deployed medical teams throughout the Aquatica Prime system to help the surviving Kalari. The beautiful world that had once been home to billions of peaceful beings was now a scarred wasteland, but life remained in the deepest ocean trenches where the aliens had hidden from their attackers. Dr. Amy Rodriguez worked alongside Kalari healers in the emergency medical facilities that had been set up in orbit around the planet. The first meeting between human and Kalari medical professionals was awkward but hopeful, as both species struggled to understand each other's biology while trying to save lives. "The Kalari heal differently than we do," Rodriguez explained to her human medical teams. "They can regenerate damaged tissue much faster than humans, but they're also more sensitive to toxins and radiation. The Zephyrians used biological weapons that are still poisoning their systems. The Kalari survivors were amazed by human medical technology. They had developed sophisticated biological healing methods, but they had never seen the kind of mechanical and chemical medicine that humans used. Working together, the two species began developing treatments that combined the best of both approaches. Speaker Aquinas, the Kalari leader who had sent the original distress call, was among the first to be rescued from the deep ocean trenches. The aquatic being was weak from months of hiding and fighting, but his large eyes showed incredible gratitude when he was brought aboard the human medical ship. "We had given up hope," he told Dr. Rodriguez through the universal translator. "We thought our people would be remembered only as another species that the Zephyrians destroyed. You saved us when no one else in the galaxy would help." Commander Lucy Foster led forensic teams that documented the evidence of Zephyrian war crimes throughout the system. What they found in the processing stations and mining ships was even worse than anyone had imagined. The aliens had not just been killing the Kalari, they had been systematically harvesting their biology for industrial purposes. "This isn't warfare," Foster reported to Admiral Lewis. "This is industrial-scale murder combined with biological theft. The Zephyrians were turning living beings into raw materials for their manufacturing processes." The evidence was carefully recorded and transmitted back to Earth, where it would be presented to the Galactic Council as justification for humanity's military intervention. The images and data would shock civilizations throughout the galaxy and change how many species viewed both humanity and the Zephyrian Empire. News of the human victory spread through space at the speed of light, carried by automated communication, buoys, and merchant ships. The Zephyrian Empire, which had terrorized peaceful species for centuries, had been utterly destroyed by a single human fleet in less than a day. The psychological impact was immediate and far-reaching. 3 other star systems under Zephyrian occupation began broadcasting desperate pleas for human assistance. The enslaved populations had heard about the Battle of Aquatica Prime and were begging for liberation from their oppressors. On dozens of worlds throughout the galaxy, species that had been living in fear of Zephyrian expansion suddenly felt hope for the first time in generations. President Karen Mitchell received reports of the victory while addressing the United Nations on Earth. The Great Assembly Hall erupted in celebration as she announced that the Third Fleet had successfully stopped the genocide and rescued the surviving Kalari. But her next announcement was even more significant. "The liberation of Aquatica Prime is just the beginning," she declared. "We have authorized Admiral Lewis to remain in the Proxima sector and respond to any other requests for assistance. Humanity will not allow genocide to happen anywhere in the galaxy when we have the power to stop it." Back in the Proxima sector, Admiral Lewis was already planning for the next phase of operations. Intelligence reports showed that the Zephyrian Empire had military forces in at least a dozen other systems, all of them involved in similar attacks on peaceful species. The Third Fleet would need reinforcements if they were going to liberate all of those worlds. "Earth Command is sending the 5th and 7th Fleets to join us," she told her senior officers during a planning meeting aboard the Retribution. "We're also getting authorization to establish a permanent base in this sector. The Kalari have offered us the use of their outer system for our operations." The Kalari gratitude was overwhelming. Speaker Aquinas formally offered humanity a complete alliance, including shared access to their advanced biotechnology in exchange for protection from future threats. The peaceful aliens understood that they would never be truly safe as long as predator species like the Zephyrians existed in the galaxy. "Our people have a saying," Aquinas explained to Admiral Lewis during their first formal meeting. "The ocean protects those who swim together. You have shown us that the galaxy can be an ocean where peaceful species help each other survive. The alliance between humanity and the Kalari would prove to be one of the most important diplomatic developments in galactic history. Human military technology combined with Kalari biotechnology created possibilities that neither species had imagined alone. More importantly, it established humanity as the protector of peaceful civilizations throughout the known galaxy." Lieutenant Colonel Susan Wright was promoted to colonel and given command of the new Marine base being established in the Proxima sector. Her troops would be responsible for training Kalari Defense Forces and preparing for future liberation missions. The Kalari were eager to learn how to defend themselves, even though their peaceful nature made military training difficult. "We may not be natural warriors like you humans," one young Kalari told Wright during basic combat training, "but we can learn to protect our families and our world. We will never be helpless again." The psychological impact of the human victory extended far beyond the military sphere. Throughout the galaxy, peaceful species began to believe that they could resist aggression instead of simply accepting it. The knowledge that someone was willing to fight for them changed how entire civilizations viewed their place in the universe. Captain Jake Morrison received new orders to take the Valiant on extended reconnaissance missions throughout the sector. His job was to identify other species that might need human protection and to gather intelligence on remaining Zephyrian forces. It was dangerous work, but Morrison was proud to be part of humanity's new role as galactic protectors. During one of his scouting missions, Morrison detected a distress signal from a system 30 light-years away. The transmission was weak and scrambled, but the universal translator was able to pick up enough to understand that another peaceful species was under attack by unknown aggressors. "Control, this is the Valiant," he reported back to Admiral Lewis. "I'm picking up what looks like another genocide in progress. Species called the Tenthari, under attack by something called the Hegemony. They're asking for help from anyone who can hear them." Admiral Lewis studied the star charts showing the location of the new distress signal. The Third Fleet was still recovering from the Battle of Aquatica Prime, but they had reinforcements on the way from Earth. More importantly, they had established the principle that humanity would not ignore genocide wherever it occurred. "Set course for the Tenthari system," she ordered. "Alert the fleet that we have another rescue mission. And send word to Earth that we're going to need even more ships if we're going to clean up this part of the galaxy." The crew of the Retribution began preparing for another battle, but their mood was confident rather than nervous. They had proven that human military technology and tactics could overcome any enemy, no matter how large or how cruel. They were no longer just the crew of a warship. They were the guardians of civilizations that could not protect themselves. As the Third Fleet moved toward its next mission, children on the recovering world of Aquatica Prime learned new songs about the day the Deathworlders came to save them. The Kalari would never forget the moment when hope returned to their dying world in the form of human warships. They had been facing extinction, and humanity had given them back their future. The story of the Battle of Aquatica Prime would be told throughout the galaxy for generations. It marked the moment when humanity stepped onto the galactic stage not as conquerors, but as protectors. It was the beginning of a new age where peaceful species no longer had to face extinction alone. Admiral Lewis stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the stars ahead, knowing that somewhere out there another species was crying for help. The galaxy was full of predators and bullies who preyed on the weak, but now it also contained something they had never faced before. It contained humans, and humans did not allow their friends to be hurt. The Third Fleet disappeared into hyperspace, carrying with them the fury of Earth and the promise that genocide would never again go unanswered. Behind them, the Kalari rebuilt their world and sang songs of gratitude. Ahead of them, the Tenthari waited for salvation that they did not yet know was coming. The galaxy would never be the same.